Honda Pilots. If you have a four-wheel drive, the lug nuts are going to be 21, but on this case, these lug nuts are 19 millimeter. Make sure you have this key as well. So we're going to be doing the brakes, the front brakes. I'm only going to be doing one side because the other side will be exactly the same. If you have a torque wrench, great, because you need to torque these lug nuts back down to 80 foot-pounds when you're done. Before you raise the vehicle up, go ahead and break these lug nuts loose. This is a 19 millimeter. Just have a 1/2 inch breaker bar with a 1/2 inch impact socket. Break these lug nuts loose. If you don't have this key and you need to get this lug nut off, I'll put a link in the description below, but Eric the Car Guy has a great video on how to get this lug nut off. Okay, they're all loose. So next thing we want to do is go ahead and raise the vehicle up. Right here, right underneath the car, sorry for the bad lighting. Right here, there's a lift point. Hopefully you guys can see that. See where it's kind of marred? This is the lift point. You don't want to lift the car from here. You don't want to lift it from the pan a little bit farther back. You want to only lift it from here. There's one on the rear as well, right in front of the back tire. So that's where you want to lift the car from. So go ahead and bring in your jack and lift this vehicle up until the front tire is off the ground. Don't ever just trust a floor jack. I like to go ahead and put a jack stand underneath the lower control arm, just in case anything happens. Doesn't fall on me and kill me. Just another added level of protection. Next thing we need to do is get this caliper assembly loose and get to the brake pads. There's 2 bolts here that we need to loosen up on the back. They are 14 millimeter bolts. These slide pins also need to be greased once we get in there. You can see right here the boot has come apart. Not apart, but just should be on that lip right there, but it's not. So we'll take care of all that. Grease these pins up, put in new pads, grease the slides. Slides are right here. This job is not very hard at all. We are not going to change the rotors because the rotors don't need it, and the owner didn't have the money to do it anyways, but I'll show you how to get those out if you need to get them out. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. We're going to go ahead and be hitting up on these to get these loose. Go ahead and use the palm of your hand, your wrist right here. Tap them up. If they're really hard and you can't use it, if you can't do it using the palm of your hand or your wrist, go ahead and grab a small hammer. Tap the hammer onto the wrench. Okay, those are both loose. Just pull them out. They're the exact same size, so you don't need to worry about size at all. With those free, grab the caliper, pull it straight out towards the camera, towards you guys. If need be, wiggle it a little bit. It'll come free. Okay, cool. Now go ahead and set it up on top of the rotor. Do not ever let a caliper hang from the brake line. It puts undue stress on the brake line. Okay, next thing you want to do, we're going to pull these 2 pins. Make sure you know which one is top, which one is bottom, because they are different. They just slide out. You can see how rusty that is. So we'll take care of that. That one looks a little bit better. Somebody greased that one properly, but we'll go ahead and take all that grease off and apply new grease. Here's the old brake pad. Just grab that, pull that towards you, and it'll come out. See how much material is left on that? Not very much at all. Let me show you a brand new one. New one in my left hand, old one in my right. Look how much material is on the new one. Crazy, huh? So the same, we're going to grease the pins, the slide pins that allow the brake caliper to move back and forth. We're also going to apply the same grease into these slides. This is where the brake pad actually slides back and forth as the caliper moves. So you want to make sure you clean these out. We're going to get some brake clean, get a cloth, clean those out, clean this out, and then there's 2 on the back side as well. You grease these up, put a light coating of Siliglide. I'll show it to you here in a second. Before I do that, let me show you what you need to do if you're replacing the rotors. I'm going to show you what you need to do to get this rotor off. You have to take these 2 screws out, and sometimes it can be a pain in the bootay. First, you need to take this brake caliper bracket off. There's 2 bolts in the back that are 17 millimeter. I'll show those to you right now. So there's one of the bolts. There's one down here. These can be extremely tight, but it is a 17 millimeter that you would need to take this bracket off You take these 2 bolts out, and then you're free to get the rotor out. I picked this setup from O'Reilly. There's also another set that you can get from Harbor Freight. I'll put a link in the description below of these 2 sets. The thing I like about this screwdriver here is that it actually, this metal part goes all the way through to the end, right? So if you're trying to get the screw out and it's not budging at all, you actually, as you start turning righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, so I'm going to be turning that way. As you're turning, you go ahead, you tap the end of this screwdriver. As I'm hitting the screwdriver, I'm actually turning it. You can also use some penetrating oil. I like to use ATF and acetone. Probably the best penetrating oil I've ever found. Put a link to the description of the video I did about that. See? There's the other one. So, get these screws out. These 2 screws. You take this bracket off, take the 2 17mm bolts in the back, take these 2 screws off, pull the rotor out, put the new rotor on. You can have rotors turned, so that's an option. I know O'Reilly around here in Southern California charges about $15 a rotor. Rotors are pretty cheap, but it's totally up to you. Like I said, the owner didn't want to do it. Key thing to remember though is when you install the new rotor, is make sure you put these screws back in. Because if you don't, it makes installing the brake caliper a little bit harder. And while you're driving down the road, it also, if you don't install the screws, the rotor will have a tendency to wobble inside there. So, like I said, we're not doing the rotor right now, but that's how you get it out if you needed to. So I'll pull this brake pad on the back out. Next thing we'll do, we'll go ahead and push this piston back. You need a C-clamp. I have a 6-inch C-clamp and an old brake pad. But before you do that, it's a good practice to go ahead and open up the brake fluid reservoir. So right here is the brake fluid reservoir. Go ahead and take this cap off and go ahead and pull this. Now you can leave that in there. I've seen these screens have algae on them, green stuff. If that is the case, when you pull yours out, go ahead and get some brake parts cleaner, spray it off and clean it out. Best bet is to go from the outside in to clean off the algae, because obviously the algae is growing on the inside. And the reason we do this is because as we push the piston back, the brake fluid that's inside the caliper has to go somewhere, so it's going to shoot back up into the reservoir, and it's going to spill out. If you have any brake fluid that spills out, don't worry. Just get a hose or a gallon of water, and when everything's done, go ahead, hose this area down with water, spray down with a hose. Water destroys brake fluid. Just wash it away. All right, I'm grabbing one of the old brake pads, put it right inside there. I'm going to use that to push the piston back. 6-inch C-clamp. Make sure it's open wide enough. You're going to mount it here on the back, and you're going to slowly close the clamp, and that will slowly push the piston back. You need to push the piston back, because if you don't, with all that new meat that's on the brake pad, the caliper will never fit, because the piston is extended as far as it'll go. You'll never get the brake caliper back on. So just slowly, carefully push this back. When it's done, it'll actually bottom out. And I can see the brake fluid is about to spill over on the reservoir. Once it's bottomed out, you can't push it back anymore. You're done. Okay. Okay, let's take care of these slide pins. So I like to use Siliglide from Napa. Part number is 765-1351. Napa Auto Parts carries this stuff. Very good stuff. Non-melting, non-freezing, non-gumming. Lubricating compound. Prevents pad squeak, eliminates caliper sticking, squeaking fan belts, and trunk seals and weather stripping. So the first thing I'll do, go ahead and get a rag. Spray some brake parts cleaner on it. A little bit of that. Go ahead and wipe this caliper pin down. Make sure you remember which way the boot goes on. Take the boot off and clean this pin up as well as you can. If it's really bad, I guess you could take it to like a bench grinder with a wire wheel. Get it as clean as you can. Okay, so the pin is clean. Get some Siliglide, just a little bit. Little dab will do ya. Just wipe it. Put it all around on the pin. Bring your boot back in. Put that in place, and then I'm going to put it back here on the top. That feels really rough. So I'm going to put some Siliglide onto the top inside where the pin goes into. Just got a little dab. I'm going to put it in the back side of the hole. Then I'll run the pin back in. Make sure I have some smooth, clean action there. Some smooth, clean action. Okay, that feels better. This top one was a lot worse than the bottom one. Okay. Put the boot back into place. You can see right here, I've got the boot back into place. It's actually attaching now to the back of the bracket. Feels really good. I'll do the same thing to this pin. Like I said, the top pin and the bottom pin are different, so just make sure you notice which one, where you take it from. So I'll do the exact same thing to this one. Clean the old grease off and reinstall it. And if it's sticking up here on the bottom, on the inside, I'll go ahead and throw some grease in there. So I'll take this off screen for a second. When I come back, I'll already have this one installed. Okay, next thing will be to do is grease the slides. Okay, like I said earlier, you have slides right here. This one actually fell off on the back. What you're going to do is go ahead and clean this area right here where the brake pad, top and the bottom of the brake pad sit, and you put Siliglide, nap of Siliglide onto those areas as well. So get some brake cleaner, get a rag, clean that as well as you can. Right here, do not get it on the rotor. Do not get Siliglide on the rotor or on the brake pad material itself on new brake pads. Shoot it with some brake cleaner. If you have a toothbrush, great. And just clean the inside of that slide. Clean this one. I'm going to clean this one now that I have it out. You can see a little bit better what I'm doing. Just cleaning it. Some brake pad kits come with new slides. If you want, you can, if these aren't damaged or hurt, you can use the old ones, the stock ones that came from Honda or Acura, or you can go ahead and use the new hardware that comes with. And now the bottom inside one. Okay, they're all clean. Get a little dab of Siliglide. Coat the inside. Like I said, do not get this on the rotor. Just a light coating is all you need. These brake pads don't travel very far inside the slides. So here we go. Here's the brake pad for the outside. Put that in the bottom. Get it past the bracket. Onto the top slide. There we go. Hold the top slide in place. Put the brake pad here on the bottom. Get it past my finger. Oh, do not install the brake pads without these slides in place. You're gonna have all kinds of noise issues and brake pad wearing issues. I'll separate the brake pad from the rotor a little bit and then clean right inside there to get any remaining gook out. So take your brake parts cleaner, spray in between there, hit the outside of the rotor, inside of the rotor. If you had put new rotors on, new rotors are shipped with a slight coating of oil on there, so you want to wash that off with some brake clean before you install the rotor. And the new pads. Okay, bring in the caliper. Make sure you have your bolts handy. Move the caliper around until you line it up. Always start these by hand. Okay. Run the top one down. Tighten the bottom one by hand. I know there's torque specs for this. I don't know them. And I've been doing this for over, I don't know, how old am I? I started when I was 9 years old, and I was probably doing brake jobs when I was 14, and I have never torqued these down to spec. I just snug them up. You don't need to over tighten them, just snug them down. I'm sure there is a torque spec for them. You guys can probably look it up by using the old Google. Next thing will be to put the wheel back on, and then tighten the lug nuts down to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Like I said, I'm not going to show the other side. The other side is the exact same as this side. I don't think I'll bore you with putting the wheel back on. That's boring crap right there. And if I showed that to you, I'd probably be questioning your intelligence. Two things to note: make sure that the brake fluid reservoir is at mark. If you need to take some out, you can use like a basting syringe or a turkey baster to pull some old brake fluid out. Make sure it's at the correct level. Before you drive at all, before you even start the car, press the brake pedal 10 times so that the pistons can come out and make contact with the new brake pads. Otherwise, you're going to go to drive for the first time, you're not going to have any brakes. So before you even start the car, hit the brake pedal 10 times. There you guys go. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. If you want questions, comments, concerns, you can always email me at bundysgarage@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at BundysGarage. If you can subscribe to my channel, that really helps me out. Hope you guys like my videos, and like always, I'll keep them rolling for you.